Hello and welcome to the Waterford Sportsability Podcast, brought to you in association by Waterford Sports Partnership and with the support of Healthy Ireland. I am Pauline Casey, Sports Inclusion Disability Officer with Waterford Sports Partnership, and today I am being joined by Ian St. John. We are going to talk to Ian in an incredibly open and honest chat about his journey so far, securing his dream job as a golf pro to a devastating cancer diagnosis, which has left him currently living with paralysis. Joining us today for our final episode of the Waterford Sportsability Podcast. Ian, will you tell me a little bit about yourself and your background?
Sure, yeah. I was born in Tramore. I did a business studies degree actually in WIT, finished there about 2002. Went to work for a local accountancy company for a couple of years, but I was never really that interested in it. I always had played golf at nearly all levels, apart from national level, I suppose, when I was growing up. So, decided to join the Professional Golfers Association in 2005. It's a 3-year training course. It's an actual degree that you do through distance learning. So I qualified there in 2007, I'd say 2008. So at the time I was 30, so it was a big move. Everyone thought I was absolutely cracked to do it, but at the time it seemed a sensible move, and then we had the Celtic Tiger crashed. So obviously was let go from my job. I was living in Limerick, so moved back down to Tramore and started my own golf academy called the St. John Golf Academy. So that was very successful. Went out to about 6 different counties, I think, and just grew it from there, and obviously got in touch with yourself at the Waterford Sports Partnership, and we did several classes at Tramore, which like as we were only talking about a couple of minutes ago, were just great crack, like great fun. And I think on the back of all that, I became the coach at WIT as well, and just working with a number of teams in Tramore, and we got to Munster finals. And I think on the back of that, then I got a job done as the director of golf at Rush Links, which was a dream move, really. And that was going great for 3 years that I was there. Flying, looking at a house in Skerries, going to buy it, and woke up one morning paralysed, and all changed. Everything just nosedived from there, and it still hasn't leveled out at all. It's unbelievable.
You woke up that morning paralysed. So tell us, what happened? What's going on?
I just woke up in bed. Legs weren't moving, and all of a sudden there was a bit of chaos in the place. A couple of MRIs later, good few hours later, I was on the operating table. I was told going in it was either a hematoma, obviously a blood clot or a fill or something like that. It was an infection, or it was lymphoma. So a bit of a shock to the system, and I was on the operating table a couple of hours, just in the middle of the night. As I said to you today 4 years ago, coincidentally, that happened. So it's very vivid, and very emotional, I'll be honest with you. So doctor came down to me, the neurosurgeon came down to me the following morning, 7 o'clock, and told me. Said, well, look, it's not an infection. I said, all right. He said, it's not a hematoma. I said, right, I have cancer. He says, I don't know. I said, but you told me it was one of the 3. He said, yeah, but I don't know. I said, what sort of trouble am I facing? He said, big, we just don't know. The next 3 days, obviously they biopsied, took the compression off my spine, and biopsy had to wait, so it's about the longest 3 days I've ever had. So you don't know whether you're going to live or die, but you certainly know that you're in deep trouble, and came back. There was non-Hodgkin's lymphoma. It was aggressive. It was a double hit as well, and it was a whopper, as the doctor said, but as the neurosurgeon said. So basically started like
a fit, healthy, active, young man playing golf every day, and to this.
I was only up at a tournament up in Ballyliffin 2 weeks beforehand, where I go and I meet up with friends from the States. We travel around Ireland or Scotland or that and play, and just from that to that. My wife was 8 months pregnant at the time, due obviously a month later. didn't know I was going to live or die. We have a little toddler. She has MS as well, so it was an absolute nightmare. My father was doing the Camino. He was a trains, planes, automobiles kind of a thing to try and get back. My mother obviously was down in Tremor. She came up straight away. She doesn't remember I don't know if she does remember much today or that, but I certainly don't. But just being told that they didn't know, it was just instant perspiration, sweat. It just flew through.
And probably something that probably did go over your head a lot, and kind of nearly pinching yourself to say, is this real?
Yeah, well, like there was so many tests that you had to do. It was rapid. There wasn't much time to chat about it. There were so many tests I had to do. Another CT scan, MRI scans, DEXA scans on bone density. There was just so many. And started on the chemotherapy then. The first round about a week and a half later, and I was told basically, look, you're going to be in here for 7 or 8 months, so get used to it. And you're paralysed as well, so you can't get up and walk around, and your whole life is it's the radius of your arm, so you require people to help. You need everyone to help because you can't do it. So go from, I think the biggest or the hardest thing with this in the last number of years, the lack of independence, and the fight to gain independence, which is it's a daily struggle.
In all areas of life, because you were out there, you were doing golf lessons, you were playing golf, you had your family life, and now, as you were saying, you're relying on a lot of people for lots of things. So even to deal with that and to accept that can be very challenging.
The acceptance is very difficult. But you see, I was getting a double whammy as well. I was getting cancer as well as being paralysed, which is cruel. It's cruel because there wasn't really, I suppose, a focus on the paralysis that much, because you had to, if you want, and I don't know whether it was a conscious or a subconscious decision of focusing on the cancer, because if you don't focus on that, well, it's not going to matter about the paralysis because you'd be dead, so it was I mean, so many things are coming at you, and I have a job as well. I'm director of golf at the golf club. August is one of the busiest times of the year, self-employed, although I have a retainer contract with the golf club. So, the last place I need to be is in hospital, so there was just so many things going on. Luckily enough, I have my wife, who's been amazing, Orla, and I've my parents, who are just the definition of love, I suppose, support, drop everything, I like people would say inspirational and all that sort of thing with what's gone on in the last number of years, but I mean, the people I think are the most inspiring are the people that don't have any support. Like, how do they get through it? I've seen paraplegics, I've seen quadriplegics, I've seen them lying in bed day after day in the NRH up in Dublin or in hospital, and they don't have support. And I just cannot see how they sort of get on with life without support. I think they're unbelievable. And
the support of the NRH, I suppose, talk to me about that, because for someone who has no experience of using a wheelchair to now learning, well, this is now my independence, your chair is your independence to get around. What was that like, or what was learning these new skills like?
Well, that was after I didn't really get a chance to do that much in terms of rehabilitation, although any chance I had. In Beaumont, I was down for physio probably once a day if I could, but I was very sick as well, and you're in bed a lot of the time, and the dosage or the chemotherapy I suppose that I on was absolutely brutal. Like, it was 22 hours a day being pumped full of drugs 5 days a week, and then you'd have an intrathecal then spinal infusion of methotrexate. So then you're lying on your back, you have to make sure you don't move. It's kind of like a lumbar puncture. Anyone that knows or who's had a lumbar puncture will know that there's headaches, because even the smallest drop of spinal fluid that's taken out or stuff that's put in, it affects that. So headaches, feeling nauseous the whole time. And as you said, then luckily enough in December that year, 2016, after I think 3 rounds of chemo, I was told that it was all gone. but you still have to go ahead with the next 3. And then there's radiation on top of that, so you're battered, you're bruised. I mean, life is, you don't know, there's hallucinations, it's horrific. And all at the same time, my little girl has been born. Sophie Ann was born in September the 23rd, and it was a battle to get down there, to get to the hospital at the Rotunda, because I had my first round of chemotherapy, and you can go neutropenic. If you go neutropenic, which means all your white cells are being basically attacked, your white cells they're decimated, and if they go below a certain level, well, you can't go anywhere, because you'll pick up the smallest infection, you're dead. So thankfully mine started to rise just in the last couple of days, otherwise I wouldn't have been able to be down for the birth. So Orla basically had the little one, Sophiana, and I was with her for 4 or 5 hours, and that was it. Whisked back up to.
And did you get a boost off of that, knowing you were there and been able to hold her?
Oh
and
yeah,
see her
yeah. But it does.
Did it give you, like, that was your fight? Like
that was my first fight, was to get there. That was my first fight to get there, was to get to be with Orla and support her. I thought must have been an absolute horrific time, as I've been, having MS, being pregnant and having a husband now who's could be dead or alive in the next 5-6 months, 5-6 weeks. You don't know. So but there is a massive boost off that, but it's terribly emotional as well, because you're devastated. You're wondering, are you going to be around for her? What's 10 years going to be like? Will I be here? I won't be able to support them. So but sorry, now going in different tangents of the question, but going back then to the it was a fight then to get to the NRH, in terms of having to build up some sort of level of stamina after all the chemotherapy, and the side effects with chemo were there for years, 2 years later. But the NRH was, people always saying, I've heard Ryan Tuberty talk about it, and I met Ryan Tuberty. He does go down to the NRH and a good few times, but he said it's an amazing place, and it is an amazing place, I suppose, and the adjective that it is. But I would say it's amazing for maybe not the same reasons, or maybe the same reasons that he would say. It's brutal. It's the most scared I've probably ever been in my life, the most anxiety that you would ever have, because you're surrounded with people that obviously are in the same situation as yourself, and it's like a boot camp. You're there for about 12 weeks, and you have to take it all in, and learn how to use a wheelchair, get fitted for a wheelchair. You're being asked questions of how you like to sit, how you like to do, and you don't know.
You're learning out of your comfort zone, because it's new, and I suppose anyone that's going in there, it's new to all of them as well, and trying to find how you're going to get around in 12 weeks. Yeah,
and knowing that you're going to be turfed out in 12 weeks. That's it. It's so you better take all you can in, and there's some amazing people that work there. Some amazing people that work there.
And doing that on the back of all the treatment that you had, and trying to have the energy to do it and to take it all in, and even having that headspace. You're here, your family's down here. Yeah. That's a lot to handle too.
Yeah. Well, the mental health aspect is massive. I think I've said it. I've said to, I think Jamie, who's here with us as well. That was the biggest challenge. I mean, I would much rather take a dose of chemotherapy any day of the week if it went on for 6 days, than the panic attacks that you would have, the constant trauma that your head gets. You're hearing so much information being pumped into your head, trying to process it. Again, like you have a daughter who's a little toddler, you have your wife who has MS, and the most difficult time for anyone with MS, particularly from a woman's perspective, is after pregnancy, because that's when you're open to a relapse, which of course Orla had as well. So, and she's living in Dublin. We're living in Dublin. I'm about half an hour away from the hospital. And you've so much to digest on a daily basis, as well as talking to oncology teams, rehabilitation teams, physiotherapy, psychotherapy. You're now filling out forms for disability allowance, where you were self-employed and had a great business on the rise up in Dublin, and it's getting a wheelchair pass. I could be here for a day, and you know more.
It's the acceptance of all that, and like as you said, I think there's a huge amount around mentally accepting it, and not leaving it go over your head, because this is all new, and it's not till you're in that situation that you realise, well, I actually need all of this, and I didn't even know that all of this existed. And that's the next thing, like, who knows it's existing, and where do you get that information, and where do you get that support from?
Yeah, well, there was a lady I had it, basically, I think it was after the third round of chemotherapy, and it was very bad, and it was really, really bad. And basically, it's after the 5 days, and you're lying in bed, you can't move it for 5 days, and you get the one into your spine the following day. So it's basically 7 days. And after that, then all the plugs are kind of taken out, all the drip bags, the chemotherapy bags are taken out. And I went neutropenic after everyone. I got an infection after everyone. I had Rikers. I'd bitten off the inside of my mouth. Couldn't eat. You can't smell. Your sense of taste, smell, everything's gone. Water tastes horrific. I did eat an awful lot of chocolate. It was great. It was, some people, they don't put on, and they lose weight. And we had dietitians, nutritionists that came around and said, you can eat anything you want, you kids. That was brilliant, So I did eat anything I wanted, but there was I think it was a psychologist and a psychiatrist by the name of Siobhan McHale, which really helped, because I had about a 3-day panic attack, which I'll never forget. And she kind of saved my brain, if you know what I mean. All the others were in their face, kind of saved me physically, but she saved my brain in terms of getting the balance right between maybe a Valium, a sleeping tablet at night, and then maybe Xanax, and kind of a small little cocktail. And it took about a week to get that right, and that was a very tough week. But after that, then I was relatively okay till I went to the NRH, which again was another battle. And as I said, the physical stuff didn't bother me really that much. It was the psychology of going from 6'4" to whatever it is, 4'6" in a wheelchair, and looking up at everyone. Whereas I'd gone from looking down because you're 6'4" to the majority of people, which was very tough. And everything that then comes with paralysis. You see the person in the wheelchair, and like myself, ignorantly, I just see the person in the wheelchair and thought, that all they have is just
perspective has changed.
But there's so much going on behind the scenes of the way your life is set up on a daily basis. It's horrific. It's cruel. Paralysis is, I think, one of the top kind of diseases, or not diseases, but sort of injuries, if you want, that you can get, because it's there all the time. There's no getting away from it. There's never a break. People have said, look, you can get off to Spain a couple of years with disability access, and of course, or go off on holidays, go over to the US, Disneyland with the girls. Yeah, great, fantastic, but I'm still in a wheelchair. I still can't get onto the sand. Yes, there is things available, but everything has to be planned. There's no spontaneity at all. And that's the hardest part. The hardest part would be your kids, and being with your wife, and not being able to play with them. I've seen my daughters fall on the ground and not being able to pick them up. I've seen them looking at me in the eyes and going, "Daddy, will you pick me up?" It's horrific.
Heartbreaking stuff.
Oh, heartbreaking stuff. Yeah, it's cruel. It's just cruel. It's cruel.
And that's something that you face every day.
Every day. Yeah.
And that's probably the hardest part of what's going on in your life, as opposed to the chair or your treatment or anything else. It's that type of stuff. Yeah, it is. Yeah. I've been. There's a great lady, or Liz, over in the Sulla Centre, who I see twice a week, who's again has just been amazing. Liz Finch, and she's again saves me on a kind of a psychological and emotional level, and you don't realise, I suppose, over the years, but you there's work built up, mentally, meditation. Things that would have been interesting from a professional level in terms of the golf and the psychology of the game as well. So I was very interested in it, and then I was kind of forced to get used to it and adapt. That sort of applying meditation to get through on a daily basis.
So, yeah, I will never accept this situation. I still don't see myself in a wheelchair, as crazy as that sounds. I just see myself as Ian. I'm aware of it, but I think there's, look, with
but
this...
I think that's a very important message, though, for anybody with a disability, whether they acquire it or not, is that you are Ian. You are not Ian in a wheelchair.
Yeah.
You know, it's something we alluded to in some of the other episodes as well, is you don't want to be labelled, you don't want to be categorised.
No.
You're a person, we're all people. And I think that's the important thing. I suppose from your end, you have seen life on both sides. In terms of, you know, using the chair, what are the challenges or barriers for you now in everyday life? Like, what are things now that you see that you mightn't have seen before you were in the chair?
Yeah, I remember watching, I don't know, it was a post on some social media channel of how do you talk to a person in a wheelchair? That was the question. And the answer back was, well, my name is John or Mary, whatever it is. And we start from there. That's it. Like, you know, as you said, people, my friends, would they approach me differently? Well, not really. I suppose when I meet anyone, I think I'm trying to make them more comfortable than the other way around, if that makes any sense, because then I feel okay. Getting around to anything is a battle. Like, I'm a golf professional. I'm still a member of the PGA. I didn't want to know about golf until maybe about 2 years ago, and kind of got back into that. But my daily life in terms of flying anywhere, staying anywhere, like that all has to be checked into. You can ring ahead to hotels and see if they have a disability access room, and they definitely, and you learn like,
but is it accessible?
Exactly. And I've been to loads of places where it's nowhere near being accessible, you know, and you have to move, and then you have to go to another hotel, find some place. So you learn now that if you're talking to someone booking, you can't book online where all the deals would be. You have to deal directly with them, which can be very hard to actually get to talk to someone at a hotel.
It's what people perceive as what is accessible.
Yeah, so I just get them to take a picture of it and send it on to me now, if they don't mind, like, you know. Yeah. But it is, you learn all the things, and as I said, there's no spontaneity with it at all. It's very much a build-up and planning, which drives you crack. Like, it's very frustrating.
Absolutely.
Very frustrating. Yeah.
Absolutely. You spoke about your golf and PGA, and you were a tutor, and we mentioned earlier you would have tutored a lot of programs with the sports partnership for different groups, and as I was saying to you, even now they'd still say to me, when is Ian coming back? Get him back here. You know, what was it like, I suppose, you know, not being involved in golf, and what does it feel like coming back into that golf world again?
Yeah, I suppose, look, as I said at the start, I was doing accountancy. I just, it wasn't for me. I had to be involved in golf in whatever way, shape or form. I had to be involved in it, and luckily enough, you know, I worked really, really, really hard in my late 20s, when a lot of, you know, friends and that were probably getting on with life, and there was a lot more money and everything like that, and I didn't have that, so I worked hard to get where I was. And yeah, I suppose I didn't want to know about golf at all when this happened, because just in the weeks leading up to it, I was playing at a place called Ballyliffin up in the north of Ireland, which is one of the most beautiful, spectacular places, never mind for golf. And yeah, it was my week of the year, you know, where I used to just go away with the guys from the States, and very good friend of mine, Joe Howard, and Mary, his wife, was over at that time as well, and we had a great trip in Scotland and in Ireland, and getting back into golf then as a coach wasn't going to happen. Could possibly happen, because a lot of being a coach, I suppose, with anyone, is an explanation, demonstration. I can explain it. I know why people are hitting the ball in a certain way. I know why their body is moving a certain way, why their hands are passive or not through impact, all these things. But to demonstrate it is near impossible. Now, with technology and that, with iPads, and you have various little videos, and you can take, and you can look at maybe something that I'll look at in the future. But at the moment, I don't. And you were asking me, you were talking about it beforehand too. I think it'd be just too hard from a psychological point of view to do. The only way I can get through every day of the week, and it might look, it's distraction. It's building your day, making sure you have a lot of things on. And I have 2 little girls as well, which keep me on my toes, pardon the pun, but
basically I was imagining.
Yeah, which is fantastic as well, So, it's.
And for someone who was so deeply involved in golf and sport and activity, is there any element of sport or activity has come back into your life since being paralysed, or is it something that has been completely suppressed?
Well, Conor McCarthy was brilliant, a physiotherapist in Tramore. I've known Conor since I was probably 5 or 6 years of age. I rang him and said, look, I need to get some sort of a plan here of exercise, and just good for so many reasons, and he brought me in and got me in touch with Gary, with Jamie here in Waterford Warriors, and I went in there, and I had a very bad shoulder. I have to get an operation on that. It's just like with the paralysis, I now have osteoporosis, I have osteopenia, and I have 20% reduction in mineral content on my right hand side of my hip, and just looking at hip replacements and everything like that down the road, shoulders, and that's the cruelty of being in a chair, is not having that movement. But Conor was fantastic, and then there was Conor Croke as well, who was a physiotherapist at Tramore, and between the 2 of them, Gary, Jamie, and all the guys out in Waterford Warriors, that's where I got, I suppose, back into sport, was exercise, getting in there 3 times a week, and just
what did it feel like going into a mainstream gym, something that was probably a little bit different to what you were used to as well? So number 1, the courage to pick up the phone and ring to go in there. Did you have to go in and check accessibility? Did you just take a gamble and go in? What was it like?
I just trusted Conor, I suppose. He was brilliant. At the time, the Waterford hurling team were doing great. He brought me, he got us passes into the sessions. We got, I got to know Derek McGrath a small bit, a couple of the players, and they were fantastic at the time. I think when that kind of built up your confidence then to maybe go into a setting where, I would have walked in, you would have done weights, you would have done cardio, but I mean, Jamie, Tony, Rachel, all of them, Tricia, all of them inside were just brilliant and really welcoming. But it's frightening. It's terribly scary, and it's embarrassing, humiliating. To this day, I'm coming in here today, I'm embarrassed, I'm humiliated. I feel a sense of humiliation, probably more embarrassment than anything, because this isn't me. It's not me. Although this is the Ian that's available now and probably for the foreseeable future. But it's
and I would say probably a little bit different, to the sense that I would have known you pre.
Yeah.
And I think you are just Ian. You've been friendly. You've been bubbly. When we ring you, you're chatting down the phone, and I would see you as opposed to your chair.
Yeah.
So I would imagine that a lot of other people would see you as well, and I think you're probably more conscious that they're seeing your chair.
Yeah, very fair. Yeah. It is it's cruel. It's just cruel.
Absolutely.
It's just cruel. I hate it. I absolutely hate it. I hate it. It's scary. It's scary for the rest of your life, when you're like this.
No sense of control, and a little bit of the unknown, and not knowing where things are going.
Yeah, exactly.
Tell me, Ian, there's something very positive going on at the minute anyway. Tell me about your podcast.
Oh, yeah.
So tell me what you're doing at the minute. So your energies have been driven into something else. It is golf related, but in a different angle.
Yeah, I had the idea probably last summer. Great friend of mine, Donald McSweeney, who's the head pro down Lynch. The Irish Open was down Lynch. He said, "Come on down, we'll get you a place in a hotel and everything like that." So I had access to everywhere. I was doing a podcast at the time with Matt Keenan, WRFM. We did it every much every week, I think, which I love doing. We'd kind of done it maybe a golf analyst for the last 8 or 9 years with WRFM as well, which I loved, which was great because we were getting to talk about something that I was interested in. And Harry Ewing, very good friend of mine as well, had just left the job as the head pro in Waterford, and Harry was going down as well to Lahinch. So I went down with Orla, my wife. We spent a good few days down, and we met up with Harry, and we were just chatting. And I suppose I rang Harry and I said, look, how about we get our own podcast? Like, it can't be that difficult to do. And, yeah, exactly. Yeah. Little did we know. But we just said, I think Harry said, you know what, I was thinking the same thing. And it just grew from there about how would we get guests, just everything that goes into a podcast. And fortunately enough, Padraig Harrington agreed to be our first guest. We were waiting for a while because Padraig was so busy, and he's just an exceptional human being, never mind golfer. He's an amazing man. And he said, look, lads, come on up to the house to do so. When we heard we'd go up to the house, we were made up. We had what we thought, all our preparation done. And yeah, we spent about 2 hours with Padraig up in the house, and we did all our research. And he in fairness, he gave us an awful lot of information that he would not have given beforehand. So we're there listening to him. We're going, I'm looking at Harry's looking at me, and we're going, right, there's something huge going on here, because I've never heard him say this, So we put the podcast out. It got a great reaction. I think we got Paul McGinley, who former Ryder Cup captain. He was our next guest. I think on the back of the two of them, everything else just flowed, because we could always go to a potential guest and say, well, we have spoken to Padraig, and we did it in his house. He invited us to his house, and as soon as you say that, well, people go, well, they must be half decent, or they're great spoofers. I don't know which of the way it is, but it's one of, you know what I mean.
And what was it like, though, going back into the world of golf, but just in that different way? Like, did you get a buzz out of it the same way as you would have done if you were stepping out onto the course, or is it different for you?
Oh, Harry and I would talk. It's a buzz every time. It's an absolute buzz. There's no fear. There's no anxiety. It's an absolute adrenaline rush when we're doing it. And it is like just chatting to people in all domains of the game of golf that we're lucky to talk to, and 99% of them are just they're normal people. They live extraordinary lives. Some of them have great stories to tell, and we're professional golfers too, so we know, I suppose, how to direct it. I'm not saying that we're great, but the reaction has been great. It's building, and the numbers, the downloads every week, every month are, just growing exponentially. It's just been massive, absolutely massive.
And is that giving you something to focus on at the minute?
Oh, that is my focus.
Your drive.
Yeah, that's my focus, to make a career out of it if possible. Now, it could all stop next month. It could, and Harry and I know that. It could all stop in 3 months' time. So therein lies the work that you have to do. So for a podcast that might last an hour, you're doing 3 or 4 days preparation beforehand. You have to make sure you have all your facts and figures correct, but that's great too. You're learning. You're looking at the history of the game as well, and a lot of things that you wouldn't have known, and researching them as well. One of the best interviews in the ball been great was Tony Johnson. We spoke with Tony because Tony has MS as well, and we kind of had that kind of a bond, if you want, or that similar area to talk about. And as the interview went on, he started to speak about depression. He got very emotional. We didn't know this was coming at all, and it was just great. And the two of us on air, I think, and off air, had a great chat about it. He was a very famous golfer, had everything there, but just completely depressed all the time, and how going to get help. And I suppose it's not as much of a kind of a taboo subject as it was. There's still a lot of stigma with it, but it's still putting yourself out there.
it's having the honesty to do it and being open with it, I suppose. And you know, we definitely have touched on it in one of the previous series that we would have done, particularly with Kate Field, and she would have spoken about it, and how sometimes you're nearly identified by the sport, and there's a lot of pressure there with the sport to be a certain person or to look a certain way. And you know, being in the limelight as well can put that pressure on you not to be able to say that you're not okay.
No, it's true.
Do you feel that you were a little bit in the limelight, Ian, because of your background in golf and everyone knew your story? Or
that's the thing. I the first thing I said to Harry going out was I didn't want to get any guess based on the disability. So I would say there's only been we've done about 30 episodes and we've gotten to know a lot more people in the industry, but I'd say probably three guests know that I'm paralysed, know my kind of story if you want. I didn't want to build on the back of that. And that was that's kind of been a debate in my head and other people as to why wouldn't you do it that way. I didn't want to be known for this. I want to be known for us going out, getting the information and researching, and not being a charity case. But I didn't want to be known as they got it on the back of because of Ian's story.
And it kind of comes back to a little bit about what you've said a number of times throughout our conversation, is you want it to be for Ian because I am Ian, not Ian in the chair. And it kind of brings it back to that again, doesn't it? It is like, and I just didn't want it for that reason, like, and I just felt that it wouldn't have been. I think inevitably somewhere throughout an episode with someone, they might have mentioned something to me, and I just didn't want that. So I'd say a lot of people, if they were to find out, might be a little bit surprised by it, but. Look, eventually it's going to come out, but I just want to get. It's Ian, as you said. It's Ian, not the chair, not what I've gone through, not cancer or anything like that. So Ian, tell me as well, what's next for you? What's on the plan down the road?
What's on the plan down the road?
Looking to the future.
I suppose we've got a house being built out in Tramore now, thank God, because that hopefully will be in that by Christmas, and because it's been very difficult for Orla and I, and the girls to a certain extent. We've been driving in and out Tramore every day to bring the girls to school until obviously the COVID happened. They're back now next week, so we're living in Pilltown in Kilkenny, so we have to drive them in and out, because we didn't want them going to school in Kilkenny or in Pilltown. Not knowing anyone going into school in Tramore, so we wanted to get them into the preschool in Montessori. So everyone have been busy kids, and Sinead and Lisa, all the girls up there in Tramore have been just phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. In helping Orla and I with the girls, and the national school, then the Holy Cross has been fantastic as well. Just really accepting, really just understanding, but not in any way identifying the situation that we're in as well. They've been all brilliant. So that's a huge part for us, is getting a house in Tramore, living in Tramore, and not having to travel in and out to Pilltown every day of the week. Because it is. I was only totting it up there the other day, but I think in the last 3 years we've done about 56,000 kilometres going in and out to Tramore from Pilltown. It's ridiculous. So there's that. The podcast, we have a sponsor on board now as well, Flowgas, and we're pitching to another couple of people, another couple of industries. But because of this COVID, as we were saying just beforehand, sponsorship and everything like that has just been decimated in all aspects of every business. So it's a battle. It's to try and show that we can grow, or at least advertise people or promote people's business. So there's that. I'm trying to actually get back into golf. I've spoken with the EDGA, which is the European Golfers Disability Association. This guy called Tony Bennett. His father, actually Howard Bennett, was the national coach in the Golfing Union of Ireland. So I knew Howard a little bit. I had a couple of lessons with him going back many years. So his son obviously is the kind of CEO or chairman of the European Golfers Disability Association. Keep getting wrong. So there's talk of golf coming to the Paralympics in the next few years, and that's exciting. There is a machine called a Paragolf. It's about 40 grand worth, I think, but it does give you the ability to play. So yeah, I'd love to get back into that. I'd love to actually get out and play. I'd actually kill to get back out and play. So there's that, the podcast, and kayaking. Doing a lot of kayaking last year, which has just been fantastic. Haven't done it this year, obviously, with the COVID. Could go out and do a little bit, but I suppose because of the nature of paralysis, or having MS, we're kind of more vulnerable to picking up COVID and that, so we should be very careful. So it's isolating a lot from the people, just getting the girls back to school and just trying to have some sort of normality. That's for the future. I suppose I do and I don't think of the future, because you always have to be in the present. With the nature of being paralysed, you always have to try and be in the present. It's dangerous to go back and it's dangerous to go forward, because if you do either one, you're looking at the life you could have. What if, and that's a dangerous kind of a rabbit hole to go down, because it's very hard to get back out of, and you do an awful lot of training, I suppose, over the last 4 years, conscious or subconscious, to try not let yourself go down there. And as much as you kind of have to build for the future, there's no goal setting, I suppose it is, but maybe somewhere in the back of your mind it is there. From I suppose from a psychological perspective, I think I'm winning at the moment. From a physical perspective, I have several issues going on, which I've tried as much as I can from a psychological point of view not to let interfere in my daily life, but they inevitably do, because physical things you can't overcome. They're there, psychological things you can battle with and maybe win if you want, but the physical things, there has to be intervention, so I have a couple of operations on the way, but that's probably where I am in terms of looking to the future now.
And I suppose I would say that you're a very positive person. I think you're a very independent person, and I think a lot of people could learn from you, from your experience. And is there anything that you could advise somebody, if someone acquires a disability, if someone's born with a disability, on the way you've approached things about being independent and keeping that independency?
Someone asked me this recently. There's a long and short answer. The short answer would be, when this all happened, I think people said, you're very good and you're doing this and you're being positive. I don't see that you have an option. That's the short answer. I don't think you have an option. You have to get on with it. So that's probably the short answer. The longer answer is 4 years ago today, I died. That's it. That's the way I've seen it. If I do go down that rabbit hole, which I try an awful lot, and today would be very hard and not to, because obviously it's a 4-year anniversary, and not that you're looking out for it, but it's the day that everything changed. I would say that life ended for me 4 years ago that day. I sometimes I look at things in if I am in that kind of a reflective mood, I would see myself as being an elderly person looking back in life, on what I did, what I could have done, what I did do. Obviously, I'm 42 years of age. I do have a chance to do things in the future, but that would be the way I look at it. That I do sometimes see myself looking back as if I'm near death. That what if? what I could have done. It's cruel. It is cruel, but you have to get on with it. That sort of place, or that sort of a question in my head has to be neutralised pretty quickly, and it usually is by one of my daughters clappering me on the legs, or saying that we have to do this, that or the other, or I have to do something to do with a podcast. Live every day. Absolutely live every day. Nothing has frustrated or angered me more in this whole COVID situation than people bitching and giving out about the small little things. They haven't a clue. People haven't a clue of how lucky they are. It's a cliche thing to say from a person with a disability, but my God, is it the truth? Haven't a clue. Haven't a clue.
It's taking things for granted, I suppose, really, and taking life for granted.
Yeah.
And I suppose that's really the message there with that as well. Ian, from my end, I suppose you are an inspiration, whether you want to believe it or not, for lots of people out there. And there is one thing that I do know, is that the word can't doesn't come into your vocabulary. So I think that's a very important message for everybody out there, that there's no such thing as can't, that we always have a can-do attitude, and we can do anything we want to do, maybe just in a different way. Yeah. So for that, I want to thank you. I want to thank you for your time, for coming in today, and for the honesty that you've shared with us with your story and your journey so far. So thank you.
Not at all. Thank you very much. Brilliant. Thanks for this chat.
Thanks for listening to Waterford Sportsability Podcast, supported by Healthy Ireland. Be sure to follow us on social media at Waterford Sportsability, and check out other episodes on all major podcast platforms.